could be broke within a year, maybe a year and a half. And they'll have to ask Congress or the Treasury Department for money. And 500 banks could easily go under this year. And that would cost $250 billion. And the FDIC has $92 billion, including 3 years' dues paid ahead of time by the banks who contribute to the fund for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And that would last them maybe 4, 5, 6 months. So there's trouble brewing there as well. And so you don't want to have CDs in banks, and you don't want to have cash value life insurance policies or annuities for 2 reasons. Number 1, the government might try to glom them, and number 2, they may go out of business. 7 major insurance companies receive TARP funds, and as far as I know, they haven't paid them back. And that tells me that they're either on the verge of bankruptcy or very close to it. So what do you do with the money? You have gold and silver stocks, gold and silver coins, and for those who have a substantial amount of money and don't want to be totally in the gold and silver related assets, they can buy Canadian and Swiss treasuries. They don't yield much, but nothing does today. But the idea of buying them is that they're among the 4 top currencies in the world, and they will continue to appreciate versus the dollar, so it's a dollar hedge. Plus, you have total liquidity in one day. And so that's my recommendation to people. And if they don't take it, they're going to be sorry.
Well, let me ask you one quick question here, and I'm going to bring my co-host on for the remainder of the time we have here. So, do you feel it's any safer at all to be in a credit union as opposed to Bank of America or Citibank? Are they falling under the same guidelines where the credit union also has 7 days to pay you your money?
Well, yes. They're doing that unilaterally. That's all by themselves. That's not a federal rule. It's their own in-house rule. And it will spread. It will spread. Because they want to keep your money. It's not your money, it's theirs. That's the way they think.
So you work for them.
If you're going to deal with criminals, you must understand the criminal mind.
All right, well, let me bring Justin in here. Justin has a very successful show here on the weekends. Justin, go ahead, and I'm sure you wanted to ask Mr. Chapman a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and yield the floor to you.
Hey, how you doing, Proof?
All right.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Chapman?
Fine, thank you.
So, from what you're saying, and these banks who initially, think this is their money, this is, from what I see, essentially from a lot of what Mr. Ralph Epperson had talked to Doc about a lot, and from what I've read in the 14th Amendment and the Erie Rhodes Tompkins trial, by which the Supreme Court had ruled that the U.S. Constitution was null and void, specifically through the Social Security Administration and how we fall under that as corporate entities. And we essentially did sell our souls to the federal corporation that is our government. Can you go in and tell me whether I'm wrong or right, and then kind of emphasize on that?
Well, there is a school of thought in that area, and I don't completely agree with them, and so I don't get into it.
Okay. Can you tell the listeners kind of your view on the whole situation with that?
Well, very simply, the investments in securities which are held are normal. They're held for pensions and for investment, and they're all on the books of the cities and townies and counties and so on. And I've looked into it, and I just disagree with their take on it.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I've had a lot of questions with it, and the reason why I don't necessarily talk on it is because I haven't really gone one side or the other. And, I think a lot of people are confused on a lot of that, and exactly with the Article 1, Section 8 that's used as their verification for this. And I do see some to both sides, especially the fact that by law, under USC 28, the government is actually a federal corporation. And that's one thing that people have to understand, too. It is a business, and, many of the governmental agencies are the biggest corporations in the world, and that's by law from that. So where do you necessarily see us headed as far as the overall? I truly believe there's two types of martial law in my studies. There's physical and there's mental, and the mental is essentially what the mass is under, the ideological subversion that people like Gary Bezmenov has talked about, where the mass is indoctrinated to believe such a way, and they believe they're living in a what I deem a false reality. And the other would be obviously the legislation that's continually going through right now to actually forcefully, take and deem us domestic terrorists.
Well, since the late 1920s, early 1930s, there has been an effort to subvert the thinking of people using psychological warfare and propaganda and to make it simple in explaining it. And it also happened with Deweyism, which is the teachings of John Dewey, particularly in California, about the ways of teaching, which have been adopted today, and that's why so many people come out of school as well as university not knowing very much.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring him up, the humanistic ideology.
Exactly. And so the byproducts of what we see today, it didn't have too much influence in the 40s and 50s and 60s, but it started to re-evolve again during the 60s and 70s, and so you have a lot of people who went to school during those years, which includes my son, where they were exposed to that sort of thing. My son wasn't, because he never attended a public school, nor did my daughter. I lived in California. I knew how bad the schools were. And so they have used this extensively. And this controlling how people think. And it's been fairly, if not very, successful. And we have half the people in the country who don't know upside down from downside up. And they watch the TV at night. And when they're not watching reality shows or dancing or something, they're listening to propaganda. And I know that very well because I'm on the air all the time. And I know what's coming out and what I have to challenge as being untrue. And I was trained in psychological warfare when I was in the military, in counterintelligence. And I read most of the early books on the subject, which included Freud and Menninger and the first books that came out in the early 1950s on brainwashing. And so I'm familiar with it, but most people are not.
Oh, yes, sir.
And so the government spends billions of dollars every year brainwashing the public. That's the bottom line.
Oh, by all means. There's documents that have been leaked that they use news corporations, and we actually, the taxpayers, pay them to brainwash us. So you said that you did counterintelligence in the military. Around what years were you in the military?
From 55 to 59.
Okay. Did you ever heard of a guy, Special Forces, Dangerous Daniel Marvin?
No. In fact, I had almost no contact with people outside of the group that I was with. I would see people casually, but I never knew people in other outfits of any kind. I mean, we did our work, and then we went off and played and learned German and French and stuff like that. And the people in my outfit, I would have to say the average IQ was probably around 150 or 60 on a scale of 210, and the average Caucasoid in America is 118. So most of these people had pointy heads.